Alright, welcome back to another NoCode.Tech video. And in the last few videos, we've looked at what no-code is, how it works, what it can actually do, etc. In this video, I now want to just bring it to a little bit more of a practical stage and show you how these tools actually look and feel in the flesh. Now, I'm not trying to educate you on exactly how they work or teach you how to use them in this video. We've got plenty of other videos to come that will show you how to use all of these tools and more. What I want to do here is just give you a bit of a feel of how these tools are, what it's like to use them and what they can do. So we're going to look at three different tools. We've got Card, which is a niche builder, and I say that because it lets you exclusively create small but beautiful websites. We're also going to look at Adalo, which is a little bit more of a complicated, more kind of general builder, where you can build more or less any kind of mobile or web app that you would like. And then we're also going to look at Glide, which does a similar thing. It lets you build mobile apps, but in quite a different way. And I just want to show you the difference between these tools as well. So we'll start here in Card. Let's go ahead and select a template here. Now you can always start with a blank canvas, but in this video I'm just going to show you a little bit about the interface and how it works. So I've immediately come into my template here, and one of the things I like is if I click on this menu and hit instructions, Card is going to quickly explain the interface. So at all times you've got this little bar up the top right hand corner. It's got a little button for adding elements, a couple of options for undoing or redoing actions. You can play animations, you can switch to kind of mobile view, you can publish the site, etc. It also mentions these two parts here. You can click on any element such as the text or this little button or this little kind of box up here if you want to bring up the various properties, which is just another way of saying the things that you can change or play about with for each element. And of course you can drag and drop each element around about the screen to rearrange them or put them wherever you want them to be. So we tend to call this a designer, sometimes it's called a canvas, but this is a part of a no-code tool where you do the design work. Now, Card, for example, doesn't really let you do much more than that. You've got buttons, you can take payments, for example, you can do some little bits of functionality, but at the minute, it's mostly about building something kind of that's just pretty good looking and it's information based. When we go into Adalo, on the other hand, we'll actually be able to carry out logic and all of the other functions of a typical no-code tool, like a database, etc. But to give you a little bit of an idea of how you might use this, essentially, every website on Card, as many websites are across any no-code tool, it's made up of lots of different elements. So we've got an image, we've got text, we've got a button, etc. You can then rearrange these in whatever order you like. However, everything follows what we call the box model. Let me show you what I mean. If I click this text, there's a box drawn around it. If I click this text, we've got the same. If I click this text here, or this button I should say, we've got the same thing as well. Essentially, the way that web design works is you have a series of boxes all sitting on top of each other. So this big background we're looking at, we call this a container. If you look at the little line in the green that's been drawn around it, that is one massive box. Within that box, we then have an image box. Under that, we've got a text box, so on and so forth. If you want one box to appear next to another, then we use what we call columns. So if I hit add an element and I drag in a container, now this is going to jump right to the bottom of the page, just because we've got quite a long page here, and if you just look up and down, you can see again we've got a box on top of another box. Within those boxes we've got more boxes here, but now that I've dragged in this container at the very bottom, so it will say empty at the minute, and over on the left hand panel here I can change various different options. But if I come ahead and drag text in there, and I type something like this as a piece of text, and you'll see, by the way, that Card's got various different styling options. If I want to do a couple of asterisks either side, then it will make it bold, for example, although it's pretty hard to see here on the screen. But essentially, I've now got that text inside of my wider container. And the other thing that I can do with the container, I could either add another one in below that. So there we go, we've got another big container there. But what I can do is I can change this into columns, and you'll now see I've got these two little boxes I can put stuff in. So I could have one piece of text in there, and we'll leave that as text. I could hit text again. Now it's going to drag underneath that one, but actually I want to drag it over here. And so as you can see, I'm now starting to put text side by side. But let's say that I wanted to have perhaps, 3 pieces of text here. Again, what I can do is just select my big container here. I've got various different columns. I can hit add, and now I've got 3 pieces of, or 3 spaces, I guess, across the layout here. So I can put another bit of text in. We'll get text, 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 and so on and so forth. So it's a really, really simple model. We'll talk about it more a little bit later on in the fundamental series when we talk about UI, UX, all these kind of things as well. But let's just shows you how these websites come to be. Let's take a look at a different example. Here we've got a box that's intended for an image. Now at any point I can pop up here, I can hit upload, grab a random image. There you go, I've got a logo for a company called CodeMap, and I can say, okay, I want to include this much of the logo, accept, and that will show up there. But in terms of how I've styled that, or how the template has styled it for me, so again, I've got a box. Within that box, I've got 2 columns because I've got something on the left, I've got something on the right. And again, if I look at that, you can see I've got 25% on the left, 75% on the right. What that means is, within this box, 25% of the space is taken up by this logo, which looks about right. And then the other 75%, which is the majority here, is taken up by this text and anything else that we've got in there. If I then click on this image, I've got various things I can change. So there's options here, but at any point on any element, up the top left, I can click this little paintbrush for appearance. And then there's all sorts of stuff I can change. I've got a shape, I can make that a rectangle, and there you go, the image is now a rectangle. I could also play around with the height of that image if I wanted to, although I'll leave it as automatic. I could play around with the corner rounding if I wanted to round off those corners. There's all sorts of different bits and pieces that I can do here to get it looking the way I want it to look. And so that in a nutshell is how Card works as a tool. All you're doing is putting boxes in, layering those boxes up and down the way you want, and then adding various different elements in. And of course, every element itself is a box, even if you can't actually see the box physically around it, which means, I can use margins, for example, to push things away from that box. I can play around with all these different little settings, tweak things, make it look the way I want. Now, unless you're a designer, it's not necessarily easy to make a website that's good looking from the start. The good news is most no-code tools are going to come with a template. I mean, this, for example, is a template here on Card. That means you can take something that looks good, you can maybe tweak the colours, tweak the layout a little bit, but ultimately follow a design that's already there and just make it fit your brand. And of course, if this was yours, you could come in here, you could change all sorts. Let's just say I wanted to change this box and make, for example, a sign up for No Code University. I could write here No Code University. I could click there and I could write something like sign up now, and I could write, No Code University is the internet's best place to learn about no code technologies and methodologies, which hopefully is something you'll be agreeing with now or soon. So, that's just a quick example of how I could have customized this template. Of course, I could start right up here. I could change that to NoCode.Tech or whatever I wanted to write. I've got a button here. I could change where that button goes. You can see there it's got a URL. You could change that to say, okay, take me to google.com, for example. And I'll just write, take me to Google. Oops, take me to Google. Take me to Google, hit done, boom, there you go. So that's kind of how these tools work. They're really, really quick. They're really intuitive. Usually you've got a design element here. Drag various bits and pieces onto it. You then edit the individual properties or things that can be changed of each of these elements. Those are the colours, those are the width, height, and then as a result, when you layer that up over time, you have what looks like a really good, really well designed website or web app. Typically, no-code tools are also going to let you publish these pretty easily as well. If I click this little save button up here, I can simply put the title of my website in, I can put in the URL, and I can hit publish, and that will immediately appear as a normal website that I can use and show to other people. So that's Card. That's a really simple example, and I think it's a good way to demonstrate the designer. Let's now look at Adalo, and we'll look at some of the differences and some of the similarities as well. So whilst Card builds websites, And of course, those work on web, on mobile, etc. As you can see here, if I hit that mobile view. Adalo, on the other hand, is a mobile app builder and also a web app builder. The difference is that Adalo is focused on interactivity. It's focused on your user being able to come in, interact, log in, do various things within your app, which involve saving data, using data, etc. So if you actually want to build something that people are going to use rather than just read, a tool like Adalo is a good place to start. Now, Adalo has a lot of alternatives or competitors. You've got companies like Glide, you've got Bubble, for example. You've got people who use something called the WAMS stack, which is a combination of 4 different tools that we'll talk about a little bit later on. And there's always new tools coming out every day, Ycode, Builder, lots of different stuff. And we've got them all on the website here. But when I come in, I've got a slightly familiar interface. Again, we've got a big plus button just like we had up top here in Card. And similarly to Card, although it looks very different and it's got a different layout, we have all these different elements here that we can pick from and drag. And of course, right here in the middle, we've got our canvas. So I can take this button, I can drag it, I can drop it right there. Now, in terms of the similarities, here in Card we had this, what we call this designer, this canvas where we could drag and drop elements around. Adalo is pretty much the same. The only difference is Adalo puts all of the screens on your app all on one big canvas here. And then if you want to, interact with one particular element, you just kind of zoom in a little bit to the canvas and you can drag it around, put it wherever you like. So it's the same kind of idea. And you'll notice now that I've got that button highlighted there. On the left, I've got lots of things I can change. If I want to change the text of the button, I can say click me, or tap me, probably, since this is a mobile app we're building. I can change the various different icons, I can change the colour of it, etc, etc. I can literally do whatever I want to do here. I'm going to undo that though, because that's quite ugly. The other thing that I have on Adalo though that's quite different from Card is, yes, I can come in and customise all these things, but I can also add actions. And actions are going to let me do a few things. I can do a link, for example, which says when the user clicks this button, go to a new screen, or go back, or go to the login page, or go to the sign up page. I can also create new data. So right now in my database, and I'll show you what that is in a minute, I've got users, so I could create a new user, I could update the logged in user's information, I could delete the logged in user, I can send notifications, and I can make custom calls to external services for information. Now, all of that might be a little bit complicated. If you're feeling familiar with that, great, you're off to a great start. If not, don't worry. All of these aspects we are going to cover several times over across our fundamentals content, but also in a series of videos we did called the basics of Adalo. So I'm not going to worry too much about educating you at the minute on what all of these are, but just to show you how you might create, a sort of typical app here. So if I click on the left hand side, I've got this idea of a database, and I can just add various pieces of information here. So let's say that I wanted to create reminders. I could write reminders in here, and I could say, okay, so every reminder is going to have a date. So it's going to have when the reminder is due, and I could also have, what is the reminder. So I could type a piece of data here that says what is the reminder. And I could do something like just create a little relationship that says, okay, who can create the reminder. Now again, this might look a little complicated, we've got a whole lesson in this, so don't worry too much. But essentially what I've done there is just thrown together a really quick little database there that's going to let me store data about reminders. And then I could change this button, I could say create new reminder. And I can throw this up here, and again I'm just trying to show you the speed of how quickly you can do these kind of things. Don't worry too much about the intricacies. So if I come to this action, I'm going to say, right, when a user clicks this button, take them to a new screen, and we'll call that the new reminder screen. And let's just come in there. Now I'm selecting, you've got various different templates essentially here, a little bit like on Card but on a per screen basis. As you'll know when you use a mobile app, typically you'll tap something on the screen, it will take you to a new screen, and a new screen, sometimes you go back, so on and so forth. Here in Adalo, you kind of link between different screens. You can then pick a different template depending on how you want it to look. And some of these layouts will probably be pretty familiar to you in the sense of you'll have seen apps that have got layouts like this before, most likely. So you've got lots of different options by default there. The chat one's pretty cool, for example. But I'm going to click form. A form is essentially a way of collecting information from the user. Now again, don't worry too much about the config, but I'm going to go over here, I'm going to select which data collection, and it's going to say, what do you want the form to do? Well, I want the form to create a new reminder. Now I'm going to take out the name field. I'm going to do something, take that out, and I'm going to set that automatically. Now what I'm creating here is what we call a unique ID. You probably haven't heard that term before, and that's okay because we're going to explore it a little bit later on when we talk about the various different types of data that you can have, and also when we talk about data types, variables, these kind of concepts. Again, a lot of these will be new to you, but we'll explain them all very, very soon. But essentially what happens here now is when I come in here and create a new reminder, then it's going to let me do that and send me back. And so if I hit this little preview button up here, again, this is a no-code tool, so I don't have to do anything particularly extreme here. I just hit my preview button and it's going to take me to the sign-up screen that Adalo already created for me. And that's one of the things that I mentioned earlier. Quite often, if you're a designer, a developer, or you work in software, you'll know that things like sign-up screens, things like forgotten your password, etc., are the kind of things that you're building over and over again. I mean, can you really think of any app that you've used, and if it's not an exceptional app, can you really think of any app you've used where you don't have to sign in some way? Maybe you use a phone number, maybe you use your email, but almost every app requires you to sign in. And so when you're writing code, you've got to build this over and over and over again. But here, as you can see in Adalo, the minute I logged in here, it was already created for me. This is by default. I did not create this screen or this screen. It just all came here by default. So anyway, if I pop back to my preview, I'm here on my home page. It's designed exactly the way I did a second ago. I'll hit create new reminder. Okay, I'll say, right, that's due on the Tuesday, May 4th, absolutely, and maybe change the time a little bit. We'll say it's due in an hour. We'll say, what's the reminder? Remind me to film a demo of no-code tools. And I can hit create reminder. Now nothing necessarily happens. Let me do that again. Again, we'll do something else here. We'll say, remind me to make the reminders app work. We'll create a reminder again. And again, obviously nothing happens. Let me show you why. Because we've not put anything on there to display the reminders. Now Adalo has this concept of a list. If I drag that in here, it's going to let me list out data from my database. So I can connect this to reminders, and I can come in here. I mean, it's done a lot of this stuff by default, like reminder name, etc. But I can come in here. I can choose to put some text in here. So I want to put what is the reminder. And I'm going to go to my subtitle. Again, don't worry too much about what I'm doing on the interface. If you really want to learn this at this stage, you can go check out our basics of Adalo video. However, if I now go into my preview, then all those reminders that I just created have appeared because I've just listed them. I've saved them in my database when I created a new form, and then I've listed them here. And of course, if I come in here, if I do, yep, that's fine for a day. If I say, set a new reminder, hit create reminder, then it pops up on the list. So that's a really basic view of how Adalo works. A reminders app is something we've all got on our phones, and yet you can see, I mean, clearly the app in your phone is a lot more polished, and the person building that, I'm sure, spent a lot more than 20 minutes on it. But this gives you a really basic idea of how quickly you can throw something working and functional together on a no-code tool. And of course, I mentioned earlier, login, etc. is taken care of for you. If I hit log out up the back there, it's going to take me back to sign up, go already have an account, go forgot password, all of this is done for you. So really impressive way of working. Now, the one thing that I wanted to show you is, almost all of these tools, no-code tools, Adalo, Card, whatever it might be, they always have alternatives or competitor tools. For example, if you're using Card, you might find it's too simple and so you want more flexibility. In that case, you might use a tool like Webflow. You might also be using Card and decide that the style of the templates just isn't for you. You're going to use a tool that works really similarly, but has different templates. So you might pick a tool like UMSO or Landon, for example. You know, a complicated builder like Adalo is no different. I want to show you something a little bit simpler, different, that might appeal more to you. So if we have a look at Glide, the Glide is a mobile app builder as well. There's a few differences in the intricacies of exactly how it works, but essentially what happens is you hit New App. Now you either pick, do you want Glide's own database to store all your data, or do you want to use a spreadsheet? I'll pick Glide tables in this instance. But when I let that load, again, I get an interface that may feel kind of familiar. I mean, it looks very different, but if you look around, we've got a canvas in the middle. Okay, on the right-hand screen this time, we've got elements. For example, here we've got various different options we can pick, like a calendar view or a map view or that kind of thing. If I click up here, then this is going to take us to a database, and again, it's probably not going to feel similar to Adalo, but actually I can put in new columns, and there's lots of complicated stuff in here, and we will get to all of that a little bit later. But if I pop over here, some of the options I've got are kind of the same as Adalo. I could save text, I could save a number, I could save a date and a time, etc. And so it looks really similar and feels really similar. Now let me show you a slightly more built up app. If I click here into the delivery app, which is one of the apps for work templates that Glide offer, then you can sort of see, okay, here's what it looks like when someone has built a more complicated app on top of it. If I look at my database now, I've got users with lots of different user information. I've got trips, I've got tasks, I've got choices. And some of these might look, a little bit complicated, but when we really look at it, it's kind of all the different things that you need to know if you were actually building a delivery app. Like for example, how long is the trip going to take? How would you describe the trip? What hub is it starting at? What's the address of the hub? Who's the person doing it? How many drop-offs are there? All these various different elements. Similarly, if you're going to look at a user, well, if you've got a delivery app, what do you need to know about the people who are actually using your app? Well, you need to know, are they a driver or are they an admin who's setting up the deliveries? How long have they been driving for? What year? What's the vehicle, license plate, yada, 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 phone number, picture, all this interesting stuff. And then, of course, once you've got that data, you can come and create it here in Glide. Now, Glide is an exceptionally easy tool to use because once your data is in here, you can kind of customize it however you want. Watch this. I can immediately put trips on the map, or I can turn it into a calendar view, or I can turn it into these tiles, I can turn it into a list, turn it into a checklist, all sorts of different stuff that I can do to immediately make this app work differently or be more usable. And if I come in here and I look in a little bit more detail, again, if I click on this left-hand menu, we've got all these different components we can drag in and use, lots of different stuff that we can do here. And just like every other tool, you click them, you drag them into the canvas, you let them go, and immediately you can start configuring them. And if I select an element here, let's say, let's say I select this address element, then down the right hand side, I've got lots of little things that I can change again. I can change the name of it so it says address. What happens if I say address field? I can just start to change all these things. You'll see it now says address field. I can change the text that shows up. Rather than showing address, let's say I wanted to show the contact, well, I can do that. So lots of different things that you can do here, and similar to Adalo, Glide has its own version of actions. You'll notice the first time I clicked that, I was in play mode, which meant I could actually use the app as if I was in front of it, and therefore what happened is when I clicked the address field, it actually opened Google Maps to show me the address. If I specify that, you can see down here I've got an action that says view address on map. I've got all sorts of other things I can make the phone do, like dial a phone number, compose a text message, open a link, play a sound, etc. Lots of really cool stuff that you can do here. So If that makes a lot of sense to you, then Glide could be a good place to start. A lot of the time, what's really important with a no-code tool or all no-code tools is just looking across them and understanding what one fits you. If you're looking at Adalo thinking that makes a lot of sense, I could use that, then by all means start there. If you're looking at Glide thinking, oh, I like that, maybe it looks a little bit better or it works a little better for you, then again, absolutely go and do that as well. We'll talk a little bit later about how to be a little bit more scientific about picking the best tool that works for you. There's a lot of things you have to consider. For example, how intuitive is the interface? How easy is it for you to learn it? But you've also got to consider, can the tool do everything that you want it to do? There are things that Glide can do that Adalo cannot, and similarly, there are things that Adalo can do that Glide cannot. And if this seems a little bit complicated, well, it is. That's why things like these videos exist to help you navigate it and help you figure your way through it. But once you get a base idea of how no-code works in general, once you understand the fundamentals, you'll be able to quickly recognise and apply them in any no-code tool out there. So now that we've taken a little bit of a look at 3 various different tools, and there's tons of others out there, it's probably a good time to actually start diving into the fundamentals and figuring out how these tools all actually work, at which point you'll be able to pick the tool that actually fits you and fits your use case and be able to crack on and start building the app of your dreams. So jump on the next video and we'll pick up where we left off.